So this video is about fiction books. In the last few years, there has been a new explosion in non-fiction. Books like Atomic Habits, The 48 Laws of Power, and a dozen others have found a kind of renaissance. And I get it, these books are practical and often packed with genuinely helpful ideas. They make you feel like you're doing something good for yourself. But in this rush to extract information, fiction has been quietly demoted, treated like entertainment at best and a waste of time at worst. So I read more than 1,000 pages of fiction, and I found that not only fiction books were more than entertainment, but they were also better than non-fiction. And today, I'm gonna tell you 3 reasons why fiction books are more helpful, more essential, and outright superior to non-fiction. So stick around, especially for the final reason, because not only is it the most important, but it's also the most controversial. And I guarantee that it will change the way you think about fiction entirely. Do you remember the last time you walked in a room and you just knew that there was a weird tension there? Or when you got a text from your friend and somehow you just knew that they were upset? In these situations, you don't know why you're thinking that way, but you have this feeling in your gut that tells you that something is wrong. That is intuition. Your brain picking up subtle clues, patterns, and emotions from beneath the surface. But what does intuition have to do with books? See, your intuition is like a superpower, and when you dive into fiction, you're not just reading stories, you're stepping into someone else's mind and emotions. Fiction books are a sort of simulation engines which let you experience situations without leaving your room. Consuming fiction makes you feel the way the author wants you to. It adds a whole new dimension to learning. And you would be surprised to know how much a simple story can change the way your brain absorbs a lesson. Neuroscience shows that stories activate more areas of your brain than plain facts do. While facts simulate the language center, stories activate sensory, emotional, and motor areas too. When non-fiction just tells you the message, fiction makes you feel like it. It's a mental gym for your intuition. Basically, fiction hits harder than non-fiction. But don't get me wrong, just because you read a story about diplomacy doesn't mean that you'll suddenly become an expert in negotiation. It doesn't work like that. But your brain will pick up the subtleties and the essence. It will grow more accustomed to the topic you're reading. Still, there is something fiction does that non-fiction rarely can. And once you see it, you won't read books the same way again. What if I told you fiction doesn't just teach you how to think, it reveals what others are afraid to say? Because intuition isn't the only thing fiction trains. It informs you, not with plain facts, but with raw and unfiltered thought. And that is fiction's biggest edge over non-fiction. But first, if you're enjoying this breakdown, consider liking the video and subscribing. It genuinely motivates us to make more videos like this one. To understand this, you have to go back a bit. Humans haven't always had the freedom of speech. In fact, for most of history, to criticize authority, the king, the church, the system, could get you imprisoned, exiled, or even killed. So how did thinkers back then share their dangerous ideas? Well, the brave ones spoke it out loud and faced the consequences. But the smart ones told stories, wrapped in metaphor, cloaked in character, disguised as fiction. The greatest minds throughout history, who were too frightened to write down their deepest feelings, chose to express themselves through characters in a novel. Fiction helped them convey their raw and unfiltered ideas past the censors of their time. But more than that, fiction gave those ideas power, because people don't just read stories. They feel them. Wrapped in a narrative, those same controversial thoughts reached further, hit harder, and stuck longer than they could ever have in a plain non-fiction essay. And that's what it is anyways. Non-fiction is just the compressed wisdom of hundreds of fiction books. But in that compression and compilation, the true essence of wisdom is lost. Whereas fiction stays fresh, it lets you arrive to the hidden narrative yourself. When non-fiction is science, fiction is art, and that is its greatest strength. But at the same time, it is also a great flaw. See, this is where the problem comes in. Let me explain. See, by our logic, fiction can deliver the truth, wrapping it in a narrative, a story which we can read, process, and dissect ourselves. But doesn't that mean two people can walk away with completely different truths? And if those truths contradict each other, then one of them isn't the truth at all. It's something else entirely. See, this new perspective is going to change the way you look at art. This grave problem runs in everything art related, be it books, movies, games, etc. We know by now that fiction can be more powerful, emotional, and more lasting than non-fiction. But what happens when the power slips out of the author's hands? What happens when a story meant to warn you ends up inspiring the very thing it stood against? This is not just a flaw, that's the cost of art. As the French director
François Truffaut.
said, there is no such thing as an anti war film. No matter how brutal the message, someone will always see it as glory. And no matter how careful the writer is, some part of the audience will misread the narrative. The consequences increase as the sensitivity of the topic increases. I've talked about this before on this channel, and this is fiction's most dangerous defect. Because when it happens, it doesn't just distort the message, it erases the author's intent. And at that point, your experience with the story meant nothing at all. And it doesn't just affect the art, but also everyone else who consumes it. And that includes you too. This is something inevitable. It has been happening and will keep happening. The Great Gatsby, 1984, Dune, Fight Club, American Psycho, all are victims of misinterpretation. No one understood the joke. So, to sum it all up, fiction isn't just entertainment. It trains your intuition, it delivers raw, unfiltered ideas, and it smuggles truth in ways non-fiction can't. That's its power. But like all powerful things, it comes with a cost. Once fiction leaves the author's hands, it becomes open to interpretation and sometimes misinterpretation. I know I ended this video in a bad note, but this shouldn't stop you from reading fiction or any other book for that matter. And also, this doesn't mean that you should stop reading non-fiction or that fiction is perfect. In the end, what matters is that you read anything, fiction or non-fiction. But if you ask me, if you want something that truly stays with you, something that shapes how you feel and think, fiction isn't just better, it's essential.